Raging torrent which has submerged that part of the town. I think you can see the brewery behind me. That's Harvey's Brewery, one of the historic buildings here in Lewes. That's submerged. Beer barrels are just floating on a tide of dirty water. The severity of this flood took everyone by surprise and left many of them stranded in their homes and businesses.
Now, Malcolm, how have the emergency services been coping?
Well, their first act was to warn people that they should leave these buildings that were threatened as the water rose. Some of them decided to stay. They didn't think perhaps that things would get as bad as they have. So now it's a painstaking operation to visit each of those properties. The lifeboat crews are doing that now in inflatable dinghies, and they're rescuing people and bringing them to drier land. There's also a reception centre which has been set up, where people are being given a hot drink and a meal once they've been brought to safety.
All right, Malcolm Shaw in Lewes, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Well, as crucial as ever, more so perhaps, the weather forecast now. Here's Carl Tyler.
Good evening.
Evacuated with people being given emergency accommodation at the Town Hall and the Malling Centre. The middle of Uckfield remains underwater tonight with a severe flood warning still in place there. Parts of the town have been evacuated with people being directed to the Ridgewood Resource Centre. And in Battle, the Battle and Langdon School has been opened for emergency accommodation. In Kent, severe flood warnings are still in place on parts of Romney Marsh, on the River Medway, the Rother, Tees and Lesser Tees between Lamberhurst and Yalding, and on the River Bult from Pluckley to Yalding. Now, our website is being constantly updated throughout the evening. The address you need is this, www.meridiantv.co.com, of course, /floods. We'll be back in an hour with another programme, a Meridian News special with the latest on the floods. That's at 7:30, so join me and Sue for that. I'll say goodbye for now and leave the last word to come from Sue, who looks to be under threatening cloud at Uckfield.
Yes, the skies have darkened here, and after the worst flooding this town has seen for 50 years. The clear-up operation has begun. Insurance companies have already sent their loss adjusters here to count the cost, which could run into millions. Families have lost prized possessions. Businesses may struggle to survive. We leave you tonight with images of a day that this town that will live long in the memory, but one that clearly this town and many others would rather forget.
On Watchdog tonight.
This is BBC One in the South, and now South Today with Roger Finn and Sally Taylor.
And we'll be going back live to Sally later in the programme. Also in tonight's programme, as floods dominate the headlines, we have a special investigation into the fears that one of the South's biggest housing developments is at serious risk of being swamped by the sea. And is this the end of shipbuilding in Southampton? Vosper finally says it intends to leave. They're some of the worst floods the South has seen for 40 years. Many people have been evacuated from their homes in towns and villages across Sussex. The Environment Agency has issued several severe flood warnings. A severe flood warning means there is imminent danger to life and property, and action is needed now. There's one such warning for the River Uck, especially around the town centre at Uckfield and Buxted. The River Cuckmere is also affected, at Hellingley and all the way down to Alfriston. There is also a severe warning from the River Ouse from Ifield to Barkham and from Barkham to Lewes. And tonight it's the centre of Lewes where the flood risk is at its highest. Sally is in Lewes and joins us now from one of the worst affected places. Sally.
Thanks very much, Roger. In fact, as you come to us, the rain is starting to fall, the flood water is continuing to rise, and the whole of this evening looks absolutely desperate. More rain coming. Forecasters saying it could get worse around about midnight. And, of course, the tide is still rising. You can hear the thunder behind me, I'm sure. Every single fire appliance in East Sussex is being used to pump out water. Hundreds of homes in this particular area, Lewes alone, have been abandoned as people have been forced out of them. Roads are impassable. Many people, including farmers, are beginning to lose livestock as well. Now, just to give you some idea of how bad this whole area is, Mark Sanders has been up in a helicopter. So just take a look at these pictures.
The further east we flew across Sussex, the worse things got. The River Ouse had burst its banks, swelled by the incessant rain. In fact, in the last 48 hours, there's been more rain here than had been predicted for the whole of October. The floodwater has been unstoppable. Many houses have succumbed to the unrelenting torrent. Some buildings have been all but submerged. Livestock trapped by the floods have been huddling together. Some, though, will have perished. Inevitably, there are fears that if the dead animals aren't retrieved quickly, they may contaminate the water.
From the air, you can really appreciate the scale and severity of the flooding. Acre upon acre is underwater. This part of Sussex is now effectively a swamp.
Many roads have been unpassable. Police have urged drivers to stay at home. Major roads have been flooded in places. The list is long. A21, A22, A26, A27 and the A272. From the air, it seemed as if the small town of Uckfield had been simply swept away. The RNLI was here, this in a town 15 miles from the sea. They were ferrying those who'd been trapped by the floodwaters to safety. It was the River Uck which spilled out over this town. Tonight, every single river in both East and West Sussex is on some form of flood warning. These are the worst floods here in living memory, and they'll take days to subside. Mark Sanders, BBC South Today, East Sussex.
Well, as I said, the rain is coming down, the floodwaters are still coming out. This is the view of the houses just beside me, and I've got a couple of the residents with me whose houses are completely flooded. One of them, Liam Crowhurst, yours is the one on the end. Now, when did you find out? What happened right at the beginning?
Well, my wife rang me about 10:30 at work, and she'd said that the banks had burst and that I should get home immediately, of which I did, but obviously with the traffic took some time to get home. By that time, the water had sort of flooded our garden, and sort of getting in, we managed to sort of get us what we could upstairs, but it came through really fast.
Just tell me, what did you manage to take out apart from obviously your family?
Well, mainly our stuff for our baby. We have a 6-month-old baby, so sterilisers and baby clothes, that type of thing, and a few things for Brishan. It was her birthday a few days back, so we managed to salvage some of her birthday gifts.
Give me some idea about where the water is inside your house at the moment.
Well, I thought originally it was only going to sort of come in and maybe be a few foot deep, but looking over at the moment, it's sort of 3/4 up the room.
Right,
yeah.
Derek Cleaver, you're here as well. Yours is a little bit further along, isn't it? But it's the next one along with the porch. What do you think? Did you expect such dramatic weather?
No, the actual water, it levels, come up so fast, so quickly, that as soon as you started moving stuff upstairs, it actually come up through the floorboards, lifted all the carpets.
And what about insurance?
Well, hopefully we're covered by insurance enough for it, but who knows?
Have you had any support here?
None at all. I've been here now since just after 11, and there's been no police here. There's been no supervision from any authorities at all. I'm quite surprised at that.
Wish you both well. Of course, the town hall is open for people who don't want to go or can't go back to their homes here in Lewes. Now, something that happened earlier on today was that there is about a herd of 60 cattle just out there. Unfortunately, it looks as though the farmer hasn't been able to. They've got 3 boats out there. You can probably hear the noise behind me. 3 boats out there at the moment trying to herd the cattle back up onto land. It's a hopeless task. The farmer is extremely upset about it. He doesn't feel that he was given enough warning either, and nor that there are enough boats. And there's been dramatic stories all day about the emergency services working alongside ordinary people to help in all sorts of different situations. Beverly Thompson has at least one of those heroic rescues.
Where once there was a town, a torrent, Uckfield's High Street navigable only by boat. More than 24 hours of rain left rivers swollen and potentially lethal. A man stepped out of the supermarket and was swept away. Later, he was plucked to safety.
We ran out into the back garden to see this bloke standing on the riverbank where he was obviously dragged himself out of the river. I phoned the police and there was a load of people that went down there and 2 people went across the bank to rescue him when the police came and the ambulance and the air helicopter lifted him to safety.
In Lewes, another dramatic rescue. Farmer John Harmer was stranded trying to rescue his cattle from the deluge that was the River Ouse. The Coast Guard finally winched him to safety. With the waters still rising, the Coast Guard made more inland patrols. Meanwhile, other farmers reported lost stock, but there was little to be done to help them. Subsiding water brought some relief in Uckfield, but the damage to homes and businesses has already been done.
I just can't believe it, I really can't. So much hard work's gone into this place and just look what the weather's done to it. I mean, you can't help the weather, but what do you do?
Thousands of pounds worth of stock has floated out of the shops and downstream.
Gathering, trying to collect all this, and what they must understand is that this water is contaminated with sewage, and so everything they touch is contaminated with sewage.
Late this afternoon, homeowners in Lewes salvaged what they could. Tonight, parts of their town are marooned, cut off by flooding, which some believe will get worse before it gets better. Beverly Thompson, BBC South Today, Lewes.
That was Beverly Thompson reporting there. When I was telling you about the cattle, I've got the farmer here, Jim Moore, who was just turning the tractor around. We managed to grab you, Jim. What's the situation? Tell me about that.
Well, they've got most of them back on dry land now. There's just a few they're managing to lasso and tow in. There's a few have drifted off downstream. We don't know how many we lost. But at the moment, I was just making my way back to the farm because there's one been rescued down at Lamport in Lewes. It's in a pretty poor way, but somebody else is taking it back to the farm, so I've got to get back there to receive it.
How long had the cattle been out there, marooned in the middle?
Marooned since high tide, about midday.
And that's, I mean, are they going to be okay after this, or in pretty poor shape?
Yeah, they should be. They take a little while, but it's like anybody in flood conditions. You get cold, and mostly they'll be
Have you ever seen anything like this before?
Yes, 40 years ago, 1960.
And was it as bad as this?
Yes, equally as bad, yeah.
And you've nothing in between? I mean, was this expected as far as you were concerned?
Not at all, not at all.
Could you have done anything had you known that it was this bad?
If we'd known it was going to be this bad, yes, we could have got them to higher ground, but normally the flood banks hold the bulk of the water back, and there's always somewhere for them to go.
Jim Moore, thanks very much for joining us. The rain's coming down. I'm just going to walk a little way over here. There is, in fact, a whole family up there behind me. They've decided to stay the night. Roger, more from us later on, but now I'll hand back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Sally.
It's been so far. We're only 12 days into October. Already Dorset, Hampshire and Berkshire have received nearly all their normal October rainfall so far. Across East and West Sussex, it's a good deal worse than that. Some places up to 1.5 times the rainfall. And in some spots, even worse than that. Plumpton, between Haywards Heath and Lewes, has collected 5.5 inches of rain in just the last 24 hours. So some severe flood warnings in place, still on the River Ark, the River Ouse, as we've seen, also on the River Rother and the River Cuckmere. And there's the Environment Agency floodline if you want more information.
Thanks, Dorcas. Well, we return to the main story of the day, the flooding in Sussex, where many towns and villages have seen some of the worst flooding in years. Sally is in Lewes. Sally, what are people saying? How bad is it going to get there?
Oh, Goodness only knows, Roger. I mean, I'm just listening to the forecast, like I'm sure thousands of people were, that Dorcas just gave. And you can see that the rain is absolutely chucking it down here. It looks as though it's set to continue for quite some time. I've been here for the last, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, just standing here. The level of that water has been going steadily up. Now, I happen to know that high tide is around about 10:30, 11 o'clock tonight as well. So I anticipate, like many other people, that by midnight it could be pretty bad once again. You can probably hear the Coast Guard helicopter above me. That's been around for the last few minutes, so I'm not sure what's going on there, whether or not somebody's being rescued just across the way. But hundreds of people are abandoning their homes this evening. They can't return to them. Many of them have gone to community centres in various towns, particularly in Lewes here, and are hoping that at some time they'll be able to get back to their homes and start that mopping up. And that is going to take ages. The emergency services are at full stretch. But from a very, very wet and flooded Lewes, that's it from us tonight. All we can do is think about those people whose homes are flooded. From us all on South Today, good night.